Debt is the number one national problem of the U.S. and one of the only problems that affects everybody. Debt is created when payment is not made at the time when transactions for goods and services are rendered. As of December 2nd, 2013, the official debt of the United States is $17.2 trillion. This amounts to $54,000 for every person living in the U.S., $140,000 for every household in the U.S., 102% of the U.S. gross domestic product.
The most the U.S. has ever been in debt was during World War II. Experts predict that the current debt will pass that by around the year 2040.
Debt can also be found in stores. This store is in debt on their utility bill. They owe money to their utility suppliers, so they can't supply their own electricity or keep their shop open. Guess where else you can find debt? The government. Let's face it, Congress, the U.S. is $17 trillion in debt, and I'm pretty sure the next generation doesn't want that weighing them down. Debt is, and always has been, a disgraceful thing, and we shouldn't have to feel that shame again. I believe for the year 2014, you should focus on national debt, which is a problem that affects us all. The U.S. only has $2.7 trillion in circulation. If you took everybody's money in the U.S., you'd only make a small dent in the national debt.
Raising the debt ceiling has been quoted as irresponsible and short-sighted, and in the C-SPAN clip you can see Steve Bell talking about how raising the debt ceiling is affecting America.
That we're headed for.
And to go back to some of the great charts that you've come up with and that viewers can find at bipartisanpolicy.org, you estimate that the U.S. would need roughly about $17.8 trillion debt ceiling to cover its obligations through December 2014.
That's right. That's about about $1.1 trillion more than we're at right now.
And in terms of the amount of debt ceiling increase that the Bipartisan Policy Center thinks we need to have, where would you peg it? Would you peg it at $1.1 trillion or beyond that?
If you want to be safe and try to get by the craziness of the November 2014 elections, and we think that 1.1 to 1.2 is a minimum. Now, remember that these are estimates because we don't know what kind of things may happen if we were to go and have some sort of adventure in Syria, if we had to do something in Iran, or if we had another recession where a lot of revenues fell short, that number would be bigger. But right now, just looking at what we project, and it's always dangerous to try to project the future, we think 1.1 to 1.2 trillion will get us through November of next year.
The debt is about equal to the gross domestic product, which was $17,661 billion in the second quarter. Debt as a share of the gross domestic product has risen steeply since the 2008 financial crisis. This brings us to our next and possibly bigger problem, the debt ceiling. The debt ceiling is a definite crisis. The debt ceiling has been raised 7 times since Obama's first term, allowing more room for excuse and loss of...
As we look at this legislation, number one is if we do not pass this legislation, we face a fiscal impasse on January 15th and therefore a potential government shutdown at that time.
Depending on who's doing the research, it is said that the U.S. has raised the debt ceiling at least 90 times in the 20th century. The debt ceiling was raised a total of 7 times during President Bush's 8-year term, and it has been raised 7 times under President Obama's term as of 2012.
Credit is what is extended to the purchaser by the vendor or entity.
We'll hold it for a few
Debt is created when payment is not made at the time when transactions or goods and services are rendered. We are comparing the similarities of government credit and personal credit. If you think about it, it is similar to giving a credit card to a 12-year-old. America Americans and kids buy games and forget about the debt they owe because they pay for the game with a credit card. They also spend it on unnecessary items such as sports cars, which can make them more than $60,000 in debt with no way of paying it back. This is similar to the spending budget of the United States.
The current U.S. debt is owed to many different countries, the largest two being China, who the U.S. owes $1.3 trillion, and Japan, who the U.S. owes $1.1 trillion. The rest of this debt is owed to Russia, Hong Kong, Singapore, India, the United Kingdom, Germany, North Korea, France, Sweden, Poland, Ireland, Caribbean banking centers, Canada, Middle East oil exporters, Colombia, and many other countries.
I believe that debt is a shameful thing, and that Americans should never have to feel that shame again. We strongly believe that Congress should focus on national debt for the year of 2014. Thank you for listening.